Your financial life is a direct reflection of your philosophy, not your income, not your circumstances, not your history, your philosophy. And here is the corollary that most people miss. If you want a different financial life, you need a different financial philosophy. Not different habits yet, not a different strategy yet, a different philosophy first. Because the habits and the strategy will not hold if the philosophy underneath them is wrong. The philosophy comes first. Everything else follows from it. Stay with me. Because what I am about to explain is the reason most people keep trying and keep failing, and the reason a small number of people try once and succeed for the rest of their lives. The difference is the philosophy. Let me ask you a question. What is your philosophy about money? Not your opinion about it, not what you think you should think about it, your actual operating philosophy. The set of beliefs that automatically govern what you do every time money comes into your hands. Because you have one. Everyone does. The question is not whether you have a financial philosophy. The question is whether you chose it or inherited it. Most people inherited theirs. They absorbed it from the financial reality of the house they grew up in, from what they watched the adults around them do and not do when money arrived, from what was said about money at the dinner table and what was never said at all, from the beliefs that were in the air around them before they had any ability to evaluate whether those beliefs were serving them or not. And then they carried that inherited philosophy into adulthood, into their career, into their financial decisions, without ever examining it, without ever asking whether it was accurate, without ever questioning whether it was producing the results they wanted or producing something else entirely. Let me ask you something more specific. What did the adults around you believe about wealthy people? Were wealthy people admirable or suspicious? Were they people to learn from or people to distrust? Was wealth something that happened to certain kinds of people, smarter people, luckier people, people born into different circumstances? Or was it something that could be built by anyone willing to do what it required? Because the answer to that question is the foundation of your current financial philosophy, and if the foundation is wrong, if the inherited belief is that wealth is for other people, that people like you end up where people like you end up, that the system is designed against you, then no strategy or habit or investment vehicle will produce what you want. Because the philosophy underneath will undermine every action you take. This is the first thing I want you to understand. Not all financial failure is a failure of effort. Most of it is a failure of philosophy. People are working hard in the wrong direction, trying sincerely with the wrong set of beliefs, and wondering why the effort does not produce the result. The effort is not the problem. The philosophy underneath the effort is the problem, and the philosophy can be changed. Here is the philosophy I want you to replace yours with. I call it the philosophy of keeping. Most people have a philosophy of spending, not because they are irresponsible, because nobody ever gave them an alternative. The money arrives, the money leaves, and the cycle repeats, month after month, year after year, decade after decade. The philosophy of keeping is different. It begins with one decision, specific, permanent, non-negotiable, that a portion of everything that comes into your hands belongs to your future, not what is left, a portion taken first, before the bills, before the lifestyle, before any discretionary spending. 10% if you can. 5 if 10 is currently too much, 1% if 5 is too much right now. The percentage is less important than the decision. The decision is that your future has a claim on your income that comes before everything else. Pay yourself first. I have been teaching this principle for 40 years. It appears in every financial book worth reading. It has been practiced by every wealthy person I have ever studied, and it remains the most consistently ignored piece of financial advice in the history of personal development. Not because people disagree with it, they agree enthusiastically, they nod. They say, yes, I know that, I should do that. And then they do not do it. And I want to explain why. Because the reason they do not do it is not laziness. It is not irresponsibility. It is the philosophy underneath the decision. The philosophy of spending says, there will not be enough if I take a portion out first. The bills will not be paid. The lifestyle will not be maintained. Something will break. Something will go wrong. And the philosophy of spending is so deeply embedded, so automatic, so inherited, so invisible, that it activates before the person is even consciously aware of it. They decide to pay themselves first, and then the philosophy reasserts itself, and the portion disappears into the month the way it always has. The decision is not the hard part. The hard part is changing the philosophy underneath the decision, and the philosophy changes only when you understand the mechanism. Let me explain the mechanism. The most powerful force in personal finance is not income, not investment strategy, not timing or luck or the specific financial instruments you choose. The most powerful force in personal finance is compounding. And compounding does not care about the size of the beginning. It cares about the consistency of the addition and the length of the time. Let me show you what I mean with a number. If you take $1, Just $1, and you double it every day for 30 days, how much do you have? Most people guess a few $1,000s, some guess less. The answer is $536 million. $1. 30 doublings. Now that is mathematical compounding at its most dramatic. Real investment returns do not double every day, but the principle is identical. Money that is kept and grows, kept and grows, kept and grows across years and decades produces results that seem impossible to a mind trained to think in terms of monthly budgets rather than compounding curves. And here is what the philosophy of spending does to compounding. It prevents it from starting. You cannot compound zero. Every month you spend everything, you reset to zero. And you cannot compound what you reset to zero. The most powerful force in personal finance is completely unavailable to the person whose philosophy produces a zero balance at the end of every month, which is why the philosophy comes first. Change the philosophy. Keep something and give compounding something to work with, even if it is small, even if it seems too small to matter. The mechanism does not require a large beginning. It requires a consistent one. This is the first principle of the philosophy of keeping, not how much you keep, that you keep something every month. Without exception, automatically, regardless of what else is happening in your financial life. Start there and stay with me, because the second principle is the one that determines whether the first principle produces anything of value. The second principle of the philosophy of keeping is this: what you keep must grow. Saving is not enough. I want to be precise about this because most people confuse saving with building wealth. They are not the same thing. Saving is protection. It is the preservation of what you have. It is the emergency fund, the rainy day reserve, the cushion between your current life and a crisis. Saving is necessary. It is foundational, but it does not build wealth on its own. Wealth is built by investing, by putting kept money to work, by directing it toward things that grow, businesses, markets, properties, instruments that produce returns across time. And here is where most people stop, not because they do not understand investing, because they are afraid of it, because they do not understand it well enough to feel confident. Because the barrier between saving and investing feels enormous and the consequences of getting it wrong feel catastrophic, so they save. And they feel responsible for saving. And the money sits in an account earning almost nothing, and inflation quietly erodes its purchasing power year after year. And they wonder why the wealth is not building. Because keeping is not the same as growing. Let me give you the simple version of what growing looks like. It does not require you to become an expert. It does not require sophisticated knowledge of markets or complex financial instruments. It requires two things. The first is time, starting early, or if early has passed, starting now. Because the single most significant variable in wealth compounding is not the rate of return. It is the length of time. 10 years of compounding at a modest rate produces more than 5 years of compounding at an extraordinary rate. Time is the variable that matters most, and it is the variable that waits for no one. The second is consistency, adding to the investment regularly, not when the market looks favorable, not when you feel confident, regularly, with the same automatic non-negotiable quality as the keeping decision itself. Time and consistency, applied to kept money in instruments that grow. That is the mechanism of wealth building, not as complicated as most people believe, not as simple as doing nothing, specific, learnable, available, but neither principle, neither keeping nor growing, will sustain itself without the third principle. And the third principle is the one most people have never been taught. The third principle of the philosophy of keeping is this: increase the gap. The gap is the difference between what you earn and what you spend. The wider the gap, the more you keep. The more you keep, the more you grow. The more you grow, the more time has to compound. And the gap is controlled by two levers, not one. Most people think about only one lever. They think about spending. They cut expenses. They budget carefully. They sacrifice comfort to widen the gap. And cutting expenses works, up to a point. There is a floor below which you cannot cut. You cannot cut below the cost of survival. And the gap produced by cutting alone is limited by that floor. But the other lever has no ceiling. The other lever is income. Your ability to earn is not fixed. It is not determined by your current job or your current skill set or your current market. It is determined by your value. And your value is determined by what you know and what you can do and how well you can do it. And all three of those, what you know, what you can do, how well you can do it, can be increased deliberately, specifically, through the daily practice of personal development. Your income will rarely exceed your personal development. I have said this in every room I have ever stood in. I will say it one more time because it is the most important sentence I know about wealth. Your income will rarely exceed your personal development, which means that every hour you invest in making yourself more knowledgeable, more skilled, more valuable, every book read, every discipline practiced, every difficult thing learned, is an investment that has the potential to increase the gap. Not by cutting below the floor, by raising the ceiling. Increase your value. Your income follows, the gap widens, what you keep grows. What you grow compounds, and the compounding, given enough time, produces the wealth you want. This is the complete philosophy. Keep something, grow what you keep. Increase the gap by increasing your value, not a strategy, a philosophy. The foundation on which every strategy either holds or collapses. Let me bring this together, because I do not want to leave you with philosophy alone. Philosophy without action is interesting, but useless, and I have given you enough philosophy today to act on for the rest of your life if you choose to. Here is what acting on it looks like. Today, not next week, not next month, today, decide what percentage of everything you earn belongs to your future. Write it down, make it specific, and set up the mechanism that moves that percentage automatically before you have the opportunity to spend it. This week, identify where that percentage will grow, not the perfect instrument, the accessible one, the one available to you right now at your current level of knowledge, and put the money there. You can refine the instrument as your knowledge grows. But do not let the pursuit of perfect prevent the beginning of something. This month, spend 1 hour every day on your personal development. 1 hour, specifically chosen, specifically directed toward the knowledge and skill that will increase your value in the market you serve. Not passive consumption, active, deliberate learning. 3 actions. Today, this week, this month. Not 3 dramatic gestures. 3 small, specific, consistent commitments. Because that is what the philosophy of keeping looks like in practice. Not large, consistent, not dramatic, specific, not dependent on the right circumstances or the right timing or a level of income you have not yet reached. Available, today, in exactly the situation you are in. And here is the final thing I want to say. The wealthiest people I have ever known did not start wealthy. Most of them started broke. Some of them started with less than broke. What they had that others did not was not capital. It was philosophy. They decided at some specific moment in their specific life that a different financial life was possible and that the path to it was through their own development and through the consistent practice of keeping and growing. And they began, not perfectly, not with the full plan already mapped. They began. And the beginning, compounded across years and decades, became something that looked from outside like advantage or luck or talent. It was none of those things. It was the philosophy, applied daily, without exception, across the length of a life. The most valuable thing I have ever said about building wealth is that it begins not with money, but with the decision about what to believe about money. Make the right decision, then act like you made it. Every single day. Thank you.